Hello, Michigan Realtors, and welcome back to another installment of Letter of the Law. In 2023, current President Sandy Smith chaired a forms committee which reviewed and updated a number of the forms in the Michigan Realtors library. Now, the forms committee has completed its update of the Michigan Realtors listing agreement forms. Remember that traditional agency offices should use Form B, and designated agency offices should use Form BB. Let's review the major changes to both forms. Fixtures. The list of to-be-included fixtures has been updated to cover things like wired smart home devices and invisible underground fencing and related equipment. Sale terms. The forms now ask the seller to provide more detail as to what financing terms would be acceptable. The prior contract just asked the seller about the sales price. The new forms ask the seller whether VA or FHA financing is acceptable. The new forms also ask whether the seller would consider a land contract sale, and if so, what payment terms would be acceptable. Broker's compensation. Language has been added advising seller that the listing broker's compensation is not fixed, controlled, or recommended by law, an MLS, or any third party. Of course, this has always been the case, but the committee felt it was important to explicitly spell it out in writing. In addition, language has been added to the compensation discussion, making clear that if the seller enters into an option agreement during the listing period and that option is subsequently exercised, the listing broker is entitled to its commission. Marketing. Language has been added advising the seller that the listing broker has very little control over third-party marketing of the property. Expert advice. Language has also been added advising seller to seek professional advice, for example, attorneys or accountants, when necessary. Realtors should not rely solely on this statement in the listing agreement. If something comes up later where professional advice is appropriate, the listing broker should once again advise their seller clients to hire a professional. Non-discrimination language. The mandatory non-discrimination language has been updated to comply with this year's amendments to the Michigan Civil Rights Statute. The law now also prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity or expression. Letters of introduction. In addition to discussing protected classes and prohibited discrimination, language has been added to the listing forms advising sellers of potential fair housing concerns raised when buyers provide personal information about themselves in a letter of introduction. For example, when evaluating offers, sellers should not take into account the fact that a potential buyer is a young family. To avoid any suggestion of improper motives, the seller may wish to discard introductory letters without reading them. Home surveillance. Language has been added putting sellers on notice that the use of an audio device during showings may be illegal. Michigan law prohibits using any device to eavesdrop on private conversations of others unless the parties consent. Keep in mind, a seller cannot avoid responsibility by simply posting a notice that there is an audio device on the premises. The statute, which is a criminal statute, requires actual consent. For pre-1978 homes, language was added reminding the listing broker to provide the seller with Michigan Realtors Form L2, which explains the seller's responsibilities under the federal lead-based paint statute. From the calls we get, there appears to be some confusion as to what the federal lead-based paint statute requires in the case of a pre-1978 home. Now, realtors should make certain that the following 4 legal requirements are covered. 1. The listing broker must explain legal responsibilities to seller. 2. Seller must complete the disclosure form, which must be provided to the buyer. 3. The buyer must be given the government-prepared pamphlet, which is available online. 4. Buyer must be given the opportunity for a lead-based paint inspection. Different form providers cover these various requirements differently. Michigan Realtors includes the inspection contingency in the purchase agreement form itself, the explanation of the law in Form L2, and the disclosure requirements in Form L3. Some form providers include all of the disclosure requirements in the buy and sell agreement itself. Other form providers use one addendum that covers all of the lead-based paint requirements. Realtors who mix and match forms from different sources should make sure that the forms they use cover all 4 lead-based paint requirements. We hope you find the new listing agreement to be a significant improvement and reflective of the hard work that the Forms Committee undertook. If you have questions, feel free to send those inquiries to the email below. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.